Welcome to another episode of Scott's Crazy Builds. Today I'm going to be talking about what has been happening with the Jetbike. I haven't posted anything for about 3 months and I've had some people sort of saying nothing's going on. You probably think I'm sat at home drinking beer, which I have been. However, I've also been doing a lot of testing with this, had a lot of problems and had to fix a lot of things. So I'm going to do one big long video which basically summarises everything that's happened with this lately, brings you up to speed. So here we go. Just having rebuilt the engine over winter, it was all looking really good, so I took it to a farm to try and do testing on the AFTERBURNER, which is obviously this massive tube here. It didn't go very well because the engine wouldn't idle below a bar, which is about 50% throttle, despite being fine the week before. In terms of the reason why the Jetbike refused to idle when I took it to the farm, on the first fire up a few weeks or whatever before, the top cap of the engine was glowing red hot. Now the fuel injector sits in the middle of that, and as you can see, there is a grub screw in the back holding an orifice plate, and that orifice plate controls the amount of fuel going through it. And this fuel injector has obviously got so hot that it's expanded, relieving the pressure on the grub screw. So I found it really fully backed off and letting far too much fuel through. So this has been getting too hot. Had to strip it down and do a bit of inspection. Here's the flame tube, which is basically where the combustion happens inside the engine. There's this flat top cap, which is where it bolts onto the underneath of the engine. Fuel goes into this boss, comes out of this kerosene injector that you see in the middle there, and burns with air, which gets added in gradually through these holes. Now I've had this flame tube inside the Jetbike since the word go, but it's now sort of the limiting factor to the engine working well, because obviously not only is this single skin getting way too hot, and the injector getting too hot at the same time, but also I've had pretty high engine temperatures after the turbine at high fuel load. Now, a few years ago I was shown a much better design of flame tube by a guy called Richard Staveley, who's basically a jet engine expert in the UK, and that uses a radial swirler which puts spin into the air inside the combustion chamber, and that swirling vortex mixes the air and the fuel and gives you much quicker combustion. So I've now sort of finally copied that design. As you can see, this is the old flame tube in CAD with the single skin, and now this is the new flame tube in CAD, which is now going to be double skinned, and it has this radial swirler, like I say, which Richard Staveley showed me a few years back, and I'm now going to implement into this engine. So having designed this new flame tube, I have to say a massive thank you to my friend Aaron Westgarth, who, bless him, stayed after work for 4 hours machining me these lovely new parts out of stainless steel. And here you can see the fruits of Aaron's labour. So we've got the fully assembled flame tube, which is now tigged up. You've got the swirler in the bottom there, which is basically going to push air all around that fuel nozzle, make the pattern which hopefully gives us better combustion. The bottom here, this laser cut piece, is also twice as thick as the old one. So yeah, fingers crossed, this is gonna be the way forward. after some smoky starts and messing around with different fuel injectors, I finally got the new flame tube to run really nicely. But as has been the case with a lot of things on this bike, you fix one problem and you make another. So the next problem that occurred is that the swirl in the flame tube has pushed the flame to the outsides of the walls and is now melting spark plugs. The first and most obvious thing to try was a shorter spark plug, which wouldn't poke through the flame tube so much and actually would sit with the electrode just about there, and just maybe get a wisp of fuel. I tried this and it blew the ECU. Now, I've had a lot of problems with electromagnetic interference and this ECU throughout the Jetbike development, but this did some pretty bad damage. So obviously it was somehow being amplified between the two walls of the combustor. So what I've done is put a grounded plate in between the ECU and the engine for a start. The engine outer case is also grounded. And then there's two fans in the back of my ECU, and it used to pull air through from the front, but now one pushes air in and one sucks it back out. So there's nothing should be able to get through from the front anymore. In terms of the spark plug tips melting off, I was advised by John Wallace to add some cooling holes below the plug to wash cold air over it, and I've also found that shortening the main electrode down and making it spark sideways has resolved the problem and allowed me to go back to the original plug. The Jetbike is finally running properly again, happily, fingers crossed. The next thing to do is to get this afterburner going, full chat. We need to do some testing on that, and then once that's done and mapped in, taking it back to the track. So that'll be the next video, a bit of afterburner love. If you've made it this far through, just like to congratulate you and thank you for watching Scott's Crazy Builds. Cheers.